For some reason, the fine people of Arizona love to be governed by morons. I don't get it. I don't know why. Hopefully that's not a reflection of the intelligence level of the people in the state of Arizona. But you do have to start to wonder at some point in time. Governor Janet Brewer. That's all I really need to say. Unfortunately, we got another example of the level of stupidity and moronicness of the elected officials at the state and federal level for the great state of Arizona this week, and Arizona State Representative Brenda Barton, who decided to take to her Facebook page, because that was such a good idea, to, by and large, blast President Barack Obama by, in large part, comparing him to Der Führer Adolf Hitler. There are plenty of things to bash when it comes to President Barack Obama and his policies in his 5 years as president, and I can't dispute that. That can't be taken away because it's absolutely true. I have my fair share of complaints and criticisms of this administration. However, comparing any American president, whether it be George W. Bush or in this case President Barack Obama, to Adolf Hitler is stupidity of the highest order. Now, I'm going to read some of the quotes that Brenda Barton put out there, and then I am going to respond to them so that way we could just deal with the type of stupidity that our elected officials possess. They represent us. Even if they're not in your state or not representing your state, they still represent us. We need to stop electing racist freaking morons like Arizona State Representative Brenda Barton. For example, she said someone is paying the National Park Service thugs overtime for their efforts to carry out the order of Der Führer. Now, we'll get onto this Hitler crap in a second. The bottom line is has Barack Obama gassed 6 million Jews? Did George W. Bush even gas 6 million Jews? No. We need to stop coming up with these racist-ass comparisons because you don't like that the black guy is president, trying to compare him to Adolf Hitler, who we've all been programmed through our history classes over the years to absolutely hate and despise. He has come to represent the purest form of evil as he should. And you're comparing one of our presidents who you might not like, who you might think does some evil things, and frankly, definitely George W. Bush did, and Barack Obama has done some too, but not nearly to the level of Adolf Hitler. Has Barack Obama started a two-front world war? No. Did George W. Bush even do that? No, he didn't. Did they gas 6 million Jews? No, they didn't. Did they totally, completely, 100% rob the people of all civil liberties, including free speech? No, they've done some things to restrain them and pull away some of those civil liberties, but they didn't take all of them away. As a result, the comparison to Adolf Hitler needs to stop and needs to stop now. And for any conservative or Republican that ever wants to call Barack Obama Der Führer or Hitler, I suggest you really read your history books. I suggest you get off of the racist crap. Deal with the fact that the black man is still going to be running the country for a little over 3 years. If you don't like it at that point in time, come the 2016 presidential election, stop nominating 60 or 70-year-old rich white guys, and maybe your party will actually have a shot of having the next president of the United States. You ever think of that? So we'll continue with Brenda Barton. She said the chief executive is acting as an imperial president, without regard to his citizens, only caring about his agenda. So that would be like George W. Bush going ahead with the troop surge in 2007 after his policies were widely repudiated in the 2006 midterm elections by the American people when the Democrats took control of the Senate and the House in large numbers. Doesn't that sound like George W. Bush? Where was this criticism of the Bush administration, who did even more things than President Barack Obama to act as a dictatorship or as an imperialistic president? Who's the one that started the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq? Who's the one that started this kind of imperialistic neocon industrial military complex type of way of doing things? That was George W. Bush. You could say Obama is perpetuating some of them. That's true. But to say that he's acting as an imperial president compared to your own asshole that you just had in office for 8 years? Get the fuck out of here. It continues. With all the exemptions he has unilaterally bestowed on as many interest groups. Okay, again, when we talk about interest groups, all of you in politics are frickin' crooks pretty much, 99.5% of you. So you all curtow to your interest groups. Could he not delay the ACA individual mandate for a single year without regard for the elected House of Representatives? What do you call that? What do I call that, you stupid wench? That is called Barack Obama was talking about universal health care in the 2008 election cycle. He was elected by a large margin over Arizona's, U.S. Senate Representative John McCain. Do you forget that? And one of the major things that helped sweep him into the office was the talk of health care reform and wanting to impart universal health care. So some of the people that voted against it in 2010 and tried to repudiate it, in part it was because they don't understand the law, even though it's not a good law, I will give you that. They don't really understand it, but they don't like what they don't understand, which is all too common. But you can't sit there and say that he's ignoring the will of the people when part of the reason he was elected into office in 2008 and again in 2012 was because of his reform of healthcare. Not to mention the fact that it has been deemed constitutional, whether you like it or not, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, it's the law of the land. Get over it. It happened. I continue with Brenda Barton. He's dictating beyond his authority. Who, Obama or George W. Bush? It's not just the death camps Hitler started in the communities, and this is where it gets really good. With national health care and gun control, you better read your history. Oh, I think somebody needs to read their history, bitch, and it's not us, it's you. Germany started with national health care and gun control before any of that other stuff happened, and Hitler was elected by the majority of the people. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adolf Hitler won exactly 0 elections before 1933. Did he not? Did he not lose head-to-head against Hindenburg for the presidency of Germany in the 1932 election? Didn't Hindenburg later appoint Hitler? Didn't he later appoint Hitler to be chancellor? And then Hitler imposed and got through the enabling acts. You know, what you would maybe say are a stronger form of the Patriot Act, which George Bush and the Republicans rammed through Congress late in 2001, shortly after 9/11. So if we want to go on this whole beyond his authority, and we want to go on to this dictatorship crap, let's not forget all the crap that the Republican Party did in the early portion of the 2000s to help erode many of our civil liberties and make this more of an imperialistic empire than it probably ever has been or ever will be. But to say that Hitler was elected by a majority of the people, at this point in time, Miss Barton, you have immediately invalidated any and everything else you could possibly say, even if you may have a point on this thing or that thing. To say that Obama's acting like an imperialistic president because he's trying to enact a health care law that has already been passed through Congress, signed into law, and deemed constitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court, the tiebreaker vote being conservative Justice John Roberts. How could you say that Barack Obama is only caring about his agenda and not the people when it's the people that voted him into place in 2008 and again knowing the law was out there in 2012? How is he going against the will of the people? It was one of the reasons he was voted into office both times to begin with. It's because you might not like the law doesn't necessarily mean that Obama's going against the will of the people. It is the will of the people, whether the people necessarily want to admit it or not. And Adolf Hitler was never elected by the majority of any damn body. He tried a violent putsch in 1923. If you knew your history, you would actually understand that. He tried to go on violent means, and then he went to prison in Landsberg, and then once he got out, he understood that he had to go through the political process and cause the upheaval that way. He was never elected chancellor or supreme ruler or dictator or president. He was appointed a chancellor, and then after Hindenburg died, he took over the powers of presidency, basically absolved it, and made himself supreme ruler and dictator of Germany. So you stupid wench, maybe before you open your mouth and compare people to Adolf Hitler, maybe you should read your history. Maybe you should learn what the fuck you're talking about. Your last quote I want to hit on. It got your attention to what she said in response to all the uproar about what she said on Facebook. President Obama is doing something controversial. It's not controversial that I'm criticizing him. I don't think that's controversial at all. No. Criticizing an elected leader or president is our constitutional right. There is nothing wrong with criticizing them. But you cross over the point of criticizing into hate speech by comparing the black president to Adolf fucking Hitler. who started World War II, who gassed 6 million Jews, who was a supreme total dictator, and you don't even know how the hell he took office. Just using this same old narrow-minded conservative garbage, trying to rally up enough support from your aging, dwindling, conservative, far right-wing nut job base to try and keep your ass in office and keep other Republicans in office. How'd that work for you in 2008? How'd that work for you in 2012? How's it going to work in 2016? Getting people's attention is not always a good thing. I could have come on this video, printed out a picture of you, Representative Brenda Barton, and took a big hulk of shit on it. It would have got your attention. That would have been controversial. But it also wouldn't have accomplished anything. Just like you opening your pie hole accomplished absolutely nothing. Except making you look like a moron, and making everybody that voted for you look like a moron, and making everybody that agrees with this whole Barack Obama, or frankly even George W. Bush comparison to Adolf Hitler, makes all of them look like morons. So please, please do us all a favor, Arizona State Representative Brenda Barton. Please, for the love of humanity and this country, shut the hell up.